What's going on, guys, and welcome to Highly and Alph Gaming. I'm your host, Alph, and today we're talking about Splatoon 2. If you didn't know already, I absolutely adore this game, and it's pretty easy to see why. The gameplay feels great, it's got an incredibly unique concept, and it comes with a wide variety of modes and customization options and a few very distinct gameplay modes. I'd like to talk about all that other stuff on a later date, but today I'll be focusing on ranked battles, more specifically, Clam Blitz. For those of you who don't know, the core concept of Splatoon as a whole revolves around the mode Turf War, in which you compete in online teams of 4 players to ink as much ground in a map as possible. There are different guns to choose from, different outfits, and tons of different strategies you can use to try to ink as much turf as possible. There are other gameplay modes in Splatoon 2 as well, but once you've battled in enough Turf Wars to reach level 10, you unlock ranked battles, of which there are 4. Splat Zones, Tower Control, Rainmaker, and Clam Blitz. Before we dig into the topic of this video, let's get an overview of each ranked mode and how it works. The first ranked mode to appear in the original Splatoon was Splat Zones, and it's pretty easy to see why. It was very similar to Turf Wars, but with a twist. Instead of trying to ink as much of the entire map as possible, the goal is to ink 1 or 2 defined sections of map near the center of the stage, and when one team has covered a certain percentage of this outlined zone, their counter begins to count down from 100. If that team's counter reaches 0, the game is over, with that team winning with a KO. But if the other team covers enough of the zone while one team's counter is counting down, then the team currently controlling the zone will lose control of that zone. If the opposing team puts enough ink on a zone to gain control of it, then their counter will begin to count down, and the team that used to be in control will have a certain amount of debt added to their timer that must be cleared before their countdown can continue. This debt is removed in the same manner as seconds on the counter. Every ranked mode begins with a time of 5 minutes on the clock, and if no KO has been achieved by the end of those 5 minutes, then the team with the lowest counter score at that point wins. The game goes into overtime if the losing team is in control of the zone when time runs out, but that's not important right now. Anyway, next we have the ranked mode Tower Control, which is extremely different from Turf War and Splat Zones. The match starts with a tower in the middle of the stage, and if a member of one of the teams is on top of this tower, the tower will move along a set track at a steady pace toward a spot near the enemy's base. Tower Control also has a counter like Splat Zones, but rather than keeping track of how long the other team has ridden the tower, the counter shows the closest its team has gotten to the enemy's base. When left unattended, the tower will drift back toward the center, and Splatoon 2's version of the game added checkpoints that the tower must stop at along its path before moving forward. It's also important to note the idea of the tower's movement toward the enemy's base, because this makes it progressively more difficult to stay safely on the tower the further you travel. Then there's the ranked mode Rainmaker, which is sort of like Tower Control in some ways, but not really at all in others. You're still trying to get an object from the center of the stage to a point near the other team's base, but instead of a tower, it's this fish thing called the Rainmaker. And instead of following a set path at a set pace, one of the players carries their Rainmaker, navigating in their own way and at their own pace. I should also probably mention that the Rainmaker is an insanely powerful weapon with a bubble shield that needs to be popped before a player can pick it up. The Rainmaker also stops use of all other player weapons and abilities, and the only way to lose the Rainmaker is to die. So those are the other ranked modes, and while they're all very different on the surface, they're relatively the same conceptually. They all revolve around one central object or space that each team needs to collaborate to gain control of. Clam Blitz, though, is a whole other beast. First off, it's light years more complicated than all the other ranked modes. When it first came out, it took a seasoned player such as myself 5+ rounds of playing it, plus reading the instructions a couple of times, before I fully understood how the mode worked. Let's see if I'm able to properly explain the rules to you. Okay, so when you start a match in Clam Blitz, there are these little golden clam thingies scattered all over the place, which despawn and respawn constantly as you play. Clams on top of one team's ink color can be spotted across long distances by members of that team, and clams normally spawn in clusters of 4. When a player walks or swims through some of these clams, those clams will trail behind that player, up to 9 at a time. The goal of Clam Blitz is to throw as many clams as possible into the other team's clam basket near their base, but ordinary clams won't penetrate this basket. The barrier around that basket must be broken prior to the throwing of any clams, and to break said barrier you need a power clam, which looks a lot like a football. No, an American football. Also, for those of you who know next to nothing about American football, the reason this mode is called Clam Blitz is because blitz is a term used in the actual game of football, which means to tackle the quarterback, aka the one who throws the ball to people. Anyway, remember how I said you can only hold up to 9 clams at a time? Well, the reason for this is that when you pick up a 10th clam, all 10 of your clams combine into one of these football-shaped power clams, and power clams can be thrown into the other team's basket, breaking the barrier if there is one. A broken barrier will reform itself once its timer runs out, but this timer will be partially or entirely reset when other clams are thrown into the basket. A power clam thrown into the basket is worth 20 points by itself, ordinary clams thrown past the broken barrier are worth 3, and each team starts with a counter of 100 points. Like Splat Zones, a debt will be added to the attacking team's counter when the opponent's barrier closes. Okay, so now that we've covered the basics of each mode, what's the point of this video? I've been debating on what to call this video for a while, but the point of making it is to explain what makes Clam Blitz so special to me. Call it the most competitive, call it the best, call it the most important or unique, but today I'm going to refer to Clam Blitz as Splatoon 2's coolest rank mode. That doesn't make it my favorite, that title currently goes to Rainmaker, but out of all the rank modes, I think that Clam Blitz is by far the most unique and cool. Here's why. I should make it clear that I don't think Clam Blitz is necessarily the best ranked mode, and the main thing holding it back from that title is its complexity. It was way more difficult to give a brief summary of Clam Blitz than all the other ranked modes, and as I said before, to a new player, the idea of Clam Blitz can be downright unnerving because of how many little rules and nuances there are. However, to a seasoned player of the game such as myself, its complexity is part of what makes Clam Blitz so attractive. There's so much strategy that goes into a match of Clam Blitz that simply isn't present in all the other modes. In Splat Zones, Tower Control, or Rainmaker, okay, I'm not going to say Splat Zones, Tower Control, and Rainmaker every time I want to refer to them, so from now on I'll just call them the Normie modes. The Normie modes all involve players fighting for control of one fixed area or item. There's still a pretty good amount of strategy, of course, largely in the idea of flanking the opponent or waiting for the rest of your team so that you don't immediately get splatted the second you jump into the action, but you still just kind of go for it. Maybe I'm just secretly terrible at Splatoon and all these other people are right and I just lucked my way to S+, but if I'm playing one of the Normie modes and one of my teammates isn't anywhere near the tower or the Splat Zone or the Rainmaker, I get mad at them and start spamming this way. Unless it's Rainmaker or something and you're clearing a path for the Rainmaker at a time when that's a good idea, you are not helping the team almost in any way by being all the way across the map, and I don't like playing with you. These Normie modes require coordination from each team in order to win, but it's a very simple coordination. You really just head for the central goal and shoot ink at it and other players. Instant win. It's always a good idea to spray ink at and be near the tower, Rainmaker, or Splat Zone because that's the only way for you to get points, and it's also the only way for the other team to get points. Enter Clam Blitz. Each team needs a power clam to break the barrier and start racking up the points in the first place, so that immediately encourages each and every player to spread out early on and scour the map for clams. This need to find clams all over the map encourages the players to ink as much turf as possible, since clams are more easily spotted from far away when resting in your color of ink. This makes Clam Blitz in some ways feel very connected to the primary mode of Turf War while still feeling incredibly unique. However, there are nowhere near enough clams at the start for all 8 players to quickly and individually get 10 of them, so collaboration is encouraged. Advanced players will know that every player can't be the hero, so throwing your clams at players with more clams than you can speed up the process of getting that power clam, and ultimately helping you achieve a win. So say you do manage to quickly scrounge up a power clam with your teammates or just by yourself, what then should you do? Obviously you need to slam dunk that football into the other team's basket to break the barrier, but don't go all willy-nilly and charge ahead yourself. If you manage to throw the power clam at the basket seconds before you die, that's great, but now what? If you didn't bring any clam-bearing teammates with you, then nothing. It can be relatively easy to go solo and break the barrier, but it's like 10 times more difficult and strategic to bring even one teammate with one extra clam to throw in. Breaking the barrier with a power clam instantly brings your counter from 100 to 80, but even sinking one extra clam and bringing your score down to a 77 can give you a pretty hefty lead against the competition since it's so much harder to do anything beyond breaking the barrier. Okay, Alph, we need to use the buddy system and plan ahead while we're on the attack, but so what? That's not that cool, and it's only a little more strategic than the other Normie modes. What else does Clam Blitz have going for it? I'm glad you asked. See, what really sets Clam Blitz apart from the Normie ranked modes is the need to balance offense and defense. In the Normie modes, there is only one goal, and it's the same for both teams. If you have the lead, you aren't just gonna sit there next to an unclaimed Splat Zone, you and your teammates are gonna go for the points. In these 3 modes, offense and defense are essentially one and the same. You can't attack without also defending yourself, and vice versa. In Clam Blitz, though, power clams are specific to each team, and the number of power clams in play at any given time is largely limited only by the skill and creativity of each team. You and a buddy may be sneaking around the back for that barrier break, but the other team could just as easily be doing that exact same thing to you at that time, and more quickly. Since only one barrier can be broken at any given time, that oversight on your part means that you and possibly some of your teammates are sitting across the map from your point of greatest importance with some useless power clams and leaving your own basket wide open for more points to be scored on you. You constantly have to balance the ideas of going for points and making sure the other team doesn't sneak around back as you play, and if you follow me on Twitter, you know there's no worse feeling than going in for the throw and having the other team's score snatch that victory away from you. In conclusion, Clam Blitz is really something special in my opinion. It captures the essence of Turf War with its habitation of the entire map, while still managing to require even more thinking, strategy, and skill than any of the other ranked modes. If you're playing Clam Blitz, you're in for a bumpy, intense, often emotional ride that stands out from the other Normie ranked modes. Going forward, I can only hope that Nintendo discovers more ways to make ranked modes that are this cool, and that they will come out at some point before Splatoon 2's life is over. And in that trailer in the September Direct, did they announce a new mode? They told us basically nothing in the trailer, and all the website said when I checked was that there were new weapons or something, so is there a new mode? I don't think so, but thanks for watching, everyone. Do you agree with me in what I said about Clam Blitz, or do you think it's just another mode identical to all the other ranked modes? Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, follow me on Twitter, all that classical, and have a great day.